Hey everyone! I'm Albert Boris. The Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. It's been over 3 years now since it first launched with Wave 1, and yet I still can't let go of it. And I mean, what can I say? It's pretty much what made my channel blow up in the first place, so I'll always respect it for essentially kickstarting my YouTube career. Admittedly, I may not have been excited at all when it was first announced, partly because I was expecting Mario Party Superstars DLC for that direct instead, but more importantly, it just didn't look very appealing, with its lazy graphics and focus on Mario Kart Tour tracks. And back then, I didn't like Mario Kart Tour. But now that we've lived through years of its content, it can't be denied what a journey it was. So, you know the drill, I want to make another video on it, although what can I do now? I've already ranked the individual waves, all for the 8 courses, and its cups alongside the base games. What is there left?
Dude, you've already spoiled that in the video title. Why are you building it up as a surprise?
But yeah, today I've decided that I'm gonna be ranking all 6 of the Booster Course Pass waves that came out to celebrate its 3-year anniversary. And now you might be thinking, isn't that gonna be repetitive? Haven't I talked about these tracks for I don't know how long already? Well, that's where you'd be wrong, because the waves didn't just bring us courses, even if they were the main part of it, but we also got a lot of new features for the game as well, including characters, so that's already something that's gonna set this video apart. But also, when discussing the waves by themselves, it's not just about which ones are the best individual tracks, but rather how they compare as a group to one another, in terms of effort put into it, as well as gameplay gimmicks introduced. And although before we get properly started, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're new to this channel and enjoy my videos. It would really help me out and incentive me to make more videos more often. And with all of that said and done, let's waste no more time and get started with this ranking. Okay, so coming in at last place, this one should come as no surprise. The absolute worst wave of the DLC was and will always be Wave 1, and by a pretty wide margin as well. I hesitate to say that it was bad because it certainly was not, but oh boy did it generate no hype at all from me. I didn't even buy it until like 2 days after release, and that was because I had promised a YouTube livestream on it. Fortunately, due to my low expectations, it was a pleasant surprise, but I can't state my hate for its flaws enough. Half of this wave's tracks were just completely ruined, either by graphics, gameplay, or both. Surprisingly, Toad Circuit, despite being the obvious worst track, is actually the one I have the least strong feelings on, because yeah, even though it's ugly as balls, like where's the texturing, it's not like I ever cared too much about it to begin with. What I did take offense towards though was Sky Garden's bastardized layout, Shroom Ridge's complete lack of texturing, as well as Coconut Mall's oversaturated colors, completely removing the feeling of being in a real mall. And that's not to mention the removal of difficulty there as well. By themselves, all of these are still fine tracks as they are. In fact, Shroom Ridge is actually still great in fact, but that's because it's the only one whose gameplay was enhanced. Barely. On the whole, these tracks were still major disappointments, considering the original variants felt far less cheap. The only retro track that actually impressed me was N64's Choco Mountain, partly because there was actual texturing put into it, but also because it actually changed up the track in creative ways. And surprisingly, as it turned out, the tour tracks would end up becoming the highlight of not just this wave, but actually the whole Booster Course Pass in general. Before getting this DLC, I wasn't really a fan of tour because I thought it controlled weirdly, and the idea of city tracks seemed lame and generic, but the Booster Pass really gave them justice, by having each lap take on a slightly different path. It made them some of the more varied feeling tracks, and Paris Promenade especially pulled it off nicely, with its surprise backwards lap at the end. And while Tokyo Blur is really generic and tasteless today, in fact it's the running for worst Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track of all time, I guess there wasn't really much else to pick from back then, making it seem barely better than it was. The Ninja Hideaway, which was a tour original track, was an especially pleasant surprise to cap off the wave with. I had no expectations on it prior, and ended up completely loving the chaotic atmosphere and layouts. So yeah, overall, I did end up enjoying Wave 1 more than I thought I would, partly because I thought it would be awful, but despite that, it was still a fairly sour first impression to the DLC, and so I can't be any nicer than putting it in C tier. Fortunately, the Booster Course Pass only got better as time went on though, because at number 5 we have Wave 2. Already, it's a massive improvement over the first one, which thank goodness made up for the insufferable waiting period. Yeah, for some reason it took us 5 months to get as much as an update on it, due to the lack of a proper Nintendo Direct that summer, but oh man was I happy once I did see it announced, while I was sunbathing on Puff the Beach. Because oh my god, there's a brand new track, Sky High Sunday!
1 week later.
Okay, it wasn't that bad, but it was definitely a little too simple in its layout, and made for a somewhat underwhelming finale. Plus, the anti-gravity was clearly just something they slapped on in the last last minute, to make up for the lack of it in Wave 1. Oh yeah, and that was another boring part about Wave 1. Otherwise, what's first noticeable with Wave 2 though is that the graphic quality is marginally better. Still not on the base game's quality, far from it, but at least there's a bit of texturing this time around. And the retro tracks were actually kind of interesting. Or well, besides Mario Circuit 3 that is. Lame isn't even strong enough to describe it. But I mean, come on. There was Mushroom Gorge, which took the best of each previous version for a perfect one, Snowland, an actually faithful GBA remake, which also came as a complete shock, and Calamari Desert, which allowed you to drive on the train tracks for the last 2 laps now. Considering I already loved the changing laps gimmick in Wave 1, it was so amazing to see it used for a retro track too now. And while Waluigi Pinball isn't exactly my cup of tea, it was still a gorgeous ride for a pinball machine, and I had no qualms about its inclusion. Obviously, what I was most hyped for about though were the new city tracks, and while these ones in particular aren't as spectacular today, back then it was a big deal to finally get some more of them. New York Minute is a bit boring, but the nighttime aesthetic helped it stand out quite a bit at first, and Sydney Sprint especially was a pinnacle in terms of execution, with how wonderfully organic its routing was. Nintendo was even kind enough to give an update to Coconut Mall from Wave 1, by making the cars in the parking lot do a donut spin every now and then. And even though they're still super easy to avoid, at least it's something, and you can tell they wanted to make up for the lack of effort in Wave 1. So overall, Wave 2 was good. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, but it was definitely an integral part of the journey to help us regain faith in this DLC. And so I'm gonna have to give it a B tier at least. Wave 3, being the last one we'd get in 2022, was bound to hopefully leave a strong mark, to act as a sort of end for the midway point of the DLC, and safe to say, it was definitely a pretty beautiful send-off for the time being, and in many ways built off of what worked in Wave 2. You've got Boo Lake, which was another faithful GBA remake, while also allowing itself to be more dramatic, and Peach Gardens did the unthinkable and incorporated a backward slap at the end, and Maple Treeway was just a really solid Wii track, even if there's no bouncy castle. And while the city tracks at first glance look more generic visually than in Wave 2, they make up with their higher difficulty and more interesting layouts. I mean, come on, you can't go wrong with the chain jumps going free on the last lap, or having Womps fall from the literal Berlin Wall. That's not to say that Wave 3 was all fault free. Obviously, Alpine Pass looks absolutely putrid, and the gliding physics aren't what they used to be in 7, and Merry Mountain is just such a nothing course. The atmosphere is so beautiful, but the layout is just bare bones, especially by the end. But thankfully, 3DS Rainbow Road is a great way to cap off the year, and even though it's quite a bit worse than it used to be, due to how neutered some of the turns were, it's still a fairly beautiful adventure. So yeah, pretty good tracks, and despite my knock against Alpine Pass, it's still good enough to drive on. And to make things better, Wave 3 also finally added custom items to the game, and made it so that the glider didn't deactivate during a lightning shock. And while that may not seem much, I'm actually surprised by how much it's changed the game for the better, especially custom items, like this allows for so much more variety in terms of racing. So I'm gonna give this one a high B score as well. Wave 5, Wave 5. Okay, seriously, what happened here? Now, you might be a bit surprised to hear me already be so negative on this one, when it is in the top half of the list, but actually, it is good, even if it did get announced on the first day of my Lithuania vacation, completely ruining my YouTube schedule. But anyways, what is a problem though, is how this is the only wave that didn't improve from the last one. After Wave 4 gave us characters to the DLC, and in some ways perfected the graphics and retro track remakes, I was admittedly hyped to see what Nintendo was cooking up next. Unfortunately, Wave 5 peaked during the June Direct trailer and then never recovered. On one hand, Squeaky Clean Sprint is one of the coolest Mario Kart tracks ever. Like, I don't think much needs to be said. You're racing inside a literal bathroom, and it takes perfect advantage of that. And not only was it a pleasant surprise to get 3 new characters after initially just getting 1, but I also loved how unexpected they all were, especially Wiggler. But then the full trailer came out, and it was the first time I was not hyped at all since Wave 1. For some reason, not only are the graphics a pretty big step down, but every track insists on being marginally worse than it was originally. Or well, except for Daisy Cruiser, I suppose, but that's only because almost nothing changed, making it unexciting in its own right. Otherwise though, I think Koopa Cape and Sunset Wilds need no introduction. The former is still good on its own, even if I hate the yellow rocks and ruined pipe section, but Sunset Wilds is just so underwhelming it doesn't even deserve to exist. It's neither got the sun setting, and the layout is a shell of its former self. Great job. Like, was it that hard to port over Yoshi Desert instead? And what about Moonview Highway? At first, it was super cool to learn that we got an undetermined track, but then they forgot to actually put in some cars to this oval. The city tracks are probably the least offensive ones of this wave, and while they still have some issues, most notably how LA laps removed the sunset, Vancouver opened up on the best lap and ended on the worst, and Athens somehow hit a rock bottom low for graphics, these are mostly just nitpicks, and in the grand scheme, they're definitely incredibly solid, with lots of theme variety and set pieces. In fact, Athens even completely abandons the cityscape setting and settles for an ancient ruins aesthetic, which I think makes it really epic. In fact, most of these tracks still typically range from good to great, aside from these two. In a vacuum, they're definitely more enjoyable than what we have in Waves 2 and 3, but in the context of when it was released, it still can't be understated how sadly underwhelming it kind of was.
What the hell? Oh my god!
Especially since how it was also the first wave since Wave 1 that didn't add something extra than just tracks. 2 had Coconut Mall cars fixed, 3 had custom items, 4 introduced characters, and even 6 added plenty to cap it off. But this one, nada. Could we not have at least have had like 1 or 2 new items? Oh, whatever. In the end, I feel like it'd be comfortable giving this one another high B. It's edging close to A, but not quite. Now, when it came to the top 2 of this ranking, however, it was incredibly hard to decide which one was the more thoroughly enjoyable wave. But after much consideration, I've decided that the silver medal should go to Wave 6, the grand finale. And grand it certainly was. This one was kind of the opposite to Wave 5, in that while most of the tracks here were usually just okay originally, they ended up surprising me in the best ways possible here. You can kind of divide up this wave into 2 halves. There's the Acorn Cup, which is the definitive calm before storm, and then the Spiny Cup, which is one of the craziest storms of all time. The first cup is, well, it's good enough. You've got Rome Avanti, a simple but soothing promenade through streets at night, with one of the best city track routes ever, Daisy Circuit, another simple enough town track, as well as Piranha Plant Cove, which, while not nearly as spectacular as the prior 2 Nitro tracks, was enjoyable enough, with its own city-style routing as well. Oh yeah, and there is also DK Mountain, a formerly great track turned super awkward. But fortunately, the Spinny Cup deserves all praise, with Madrid Drive being the most varied and ambitious city track of the lot, Rosalina's Ice World being hauntingly beautiful, with the wildest half-pipe physics ever, and Bowser Castle 3, which is the greatest SNES remake of all time. Like, do I even need to say anything? And of course, Wii Rainbow Road needs even less introduction. They really went all out when it came to leaving a lasting impression, and considering I had even personally predicted Daisy Circuit and Rosalina's Ice World as like the curveballs for this wave, that made it even more exciting for me. Not as much as another prediction, but we'll get to that soon. And to top it off, Nintendo even gave us 17 free Mii suits with this wave, as well as a jukebox to listen to this game's soundtrack in. Even if I would never use it in this time and age, it's still a cool feature, and I can see myself having played around with this if I was younger. Unfortunately, the characters are also some of the more generic choices we could have gotten, but at the same time, I can't imagine this game's roster without them now, so I digress. Overall, this wave is definitely getting an A tier. It was a beautiful way to end off this 10-year-old game, and is only not in first place because the best wave is even more consistent on the whole. I will never forget the moment when Wave 4 was first announced. Both the initial teaser, but also the full trailer later on. The prospect of racing on the Yoshi's Island track, the reveal that we'd be getting characters, the nearly perfected graphics, as well as seeing my curveball prediction DS Mario Circuit getting unveiled. That was probably my happiest Mario Kart moment ever. Wave 4 not only reached the greatest heights alongside with Wave 6, but it also had by far the greatest consistency when it came to everything. Let's start with the city tracks. I already always liked them prior to Wave 4 as well, but starting from this one was when they actually started to feel quite distinct in terms of theme variety and gameplay. Whether it was the lush and countryside feeling Amsterdam Drift, or Bangkok Rush with its bustling markets and orange sunsets, or Singapore Speedway with its absolutely gorgeous nightlife. And sure, admittedly, Bangkok was kinda lacking in track elements, and Singapore was unfortunately boring in the first 2 laps, but it still can't be denied that on the whole, it was collectively a glow up from previous waves. And the fact that we got 3 of them was so cool to me. The rest of this wave selection was solid too. Riverside Park has the honor of being the only weakest course per wave that doesn't offend me, thanks to the charming visuals and adorable toys walking around. Waluigi Stadium added entire new sections for you to drive on, and DK Snowboard Cross was just an all-around charming track, despite the jump physics not being what they used to be in Wii. And even though realistically DS Mario Circuit is only just good, I will always have a special place in my heart for it, and it's for the exact reason you think it is. I mean, come on, it's not every day you predict something that not a lot of other people do. And it is also one of the harder Mario Circuit tracks, something that I appreciate. Even better though, Wave 4 was also the first one to introduce characters, and even if we only got one the first time around, that's okay because Birdo was and still is my favorite mainline Mario character ever. And top all of this off of Yoshi's Island, one of the best and most intricate crossover tracks ever, and you've got a selection that I'll always enjoy coming back to. So without a doubt, as a wave, I cannot give this one anything less than an S tier. And so there you have it, my full ranking of all 6 waves in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. I hope you all enjoyed this short little ranking, because that about wraps it up for this video. But what is your ranking of the Booster Course Pass waves? Did you agree with me or not, or do I have the worst ranking ever? Let me know all of this in the comment section down below, and make sure to like, share and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more Mario content from me. Follow me on Discord, Twitter and Patreon as well for more updates, and I'll see you all soon. Until next time.